All right. Thank you guys for joining me. I am Mr. Williams, and thank you. We're here for another evening or afternoon of Sankofa Inner City Cultural League. We're virtual because, as you know, we're still going through the pandemic. If you were with us last week, you know we began to talk about making good decisions. And we talked about the 5 steps in good decision making. We talked about identifying the goal, basically knowing why you need to make a decision. We talked about gathering information so that you can actually have information to figure out your options and then to consider what the consequences could be of your different choices. Then we talked about making a decision, but is actually doing what you have decided could be done, and then going back and then evaluating your decision to make sure it truly has solved the reason you had to make a decision in the first place. We talked about making good decisions in regards to our peer pressure, and we learned about different types of peer pressure from Ms. Kristen. Thank you very much for that. And we learned about making good decisions in regard to our health and our diet. Today, I want to talk about making good decisions in regards to our friendships. Now, we've talked about how to make friends and some of the skills that may have been involved in making friends, some of the things that are important. But again, as I said, Mr. Williams has some issues. And generally when Mr. Williams has issues, they relate to family. So I'm gonna give you a bit of what's going on, and you guys help me make a decision, the right decision. Okay, so I'm sitting in my office and suddenly my son sits down in one of his pouting states on the couch. Now I only know he's there because I hear him kind of flop, which means he's really in one of his moods. So I give him a moment or so and I ask him what's going on. And he says basically one of his friends is getting on his nerves. So I give him a moment to see if he's going to just tell me, or do I have to pry answers out of it? And it appears that I have to pull answers out. So I begin. So I say, well, what's going on? My son plays online games, as many of you probably do, with people, some of which you know and some which you don't know. Well, this particular day, he's playing with people that he knows. And one of the people within the group is saying things to him that he doesn't like. But he says, one of my friends keeps saying stuff and it's really, really getting on my nerves. Okay. So my initial thought is one of your friends is saying something that's getting on your nerves. Well, what are you going to do? He says, I want to kill it. No, we can't do that. What should we do? So he sits there pouting more and more and more and more and more. He says, maybe I'll talk to him. And I'm thinking, this is a wonderful idea. So he goes away, and I continue to do what I'm doing in my office. And he comes back, and he flops back down on my couch again. Now that's a problem, because I don't like flopping on my couch in the first place. So then so what happened? He says, you know what? He won't listen. So he's like, and everybody in the group is laughing. And so my question is, all of these people are your friends? And he says, yes. So I say, now I'm giving some advice to him, and I ask, your friends thinks it's okay for him to keep saying the stuff that he's saying to you? He says, I don't know. So before I can even give him my next piece of advice, he jumps up and he's gone again. So I go back to doing what I'm doing. Sometime later, he comes back, but he doesn't flop. He kind of sits down. And I'm going, you okay? He says, I'm better. Better how? He said, well, it turns out that the other people, although they laughed, did not like the stuff the guy was saying. So everybody in that group moved to a new group. And I'm thinking, wow, because that was going to be my suggestion. Because my first thought was, can you kick the guy out of the group? He said he didn't start. So I asked that. He said he didn't start the group, so he couldn't kick anybody out. Okay. And he said if he left the group without anybody else leaving, then he would have to find new friends to play with. He didn't want to do that. But thankfully for him, everybody had decided that if this guy didn't stop, and apparently he didn't, they were all going to leave and leave him in the group, because I guess he started or whatever the case may be. And I thought, wow, that was really, really a good decision. He nailed it, basically. I was happy for him, because at one point he said, you want to know what? I'm going to just go outside. I'm just going to beat him up. No, son, we can't do that. So I'm glad he found a good decision to make. I was happy for him. So I go back to doing what I'm doing in my office. I'm happy. Then I hear my wife on the phone with our youngest daughter. And I'm going, it does not sound well at all. Because, and my wife is trying to be like diplomatic about it. She said, okay, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So finally, I can't take this anymore. And I ask, what's going on? So basically, my youngest daughter is having problems with one of her friends. Now, this is a little bit more of a personal friend. So I'm going, well, what's the matter? Apparently, again, her friend is treating her in a manner that is not nice at all. Not nice at all. So I hear my wife asking what I think is the right question. So what are you going to do? And I hear her ask it more than once, which means one of two things. My daughter is unclear about what she should do, or my wife doesn't like the answer in which she's given. So she asks again. And then I begin to hear my wife begin to give her advice as to what to do. And I then turn to my wife and make her understand this particular child, we love her dearly. But if she doesn't come up kind of with the idea, or the idea on her own, or you at least make her believe she's come up with the answer on her own, she tends not to go in that direction. So I said to my wife that we need to find out, with all that's going on, however bad it is, she kind of needs to make a decision of what she's going to do. So we have to get her to express more about how she feels and then what she's going to do about it. So they're on the phone, I don't know, for a while more. And I suddenly hear my wife say, okay. And I turn and look, and she's doing that shaking of the head motion, which means whatever my daughter has decided to do, and I'll tell you guys about that in a moment, my wife likes. She's like, okay. And I'm like, you off the phone? She says, yes. I says, okay, so what happened? She said, well, she tells me the guy's name, and names are not important in this story, has been treating her, it's not just today, he's been saying rather mean things to her for a little while. And if I didn't say this in the beginning, they live together. And she is finally up to the point where she's fed up. She doesn't feel that she should have to put up with this kind of being treated in this manner at all. So she's absolutely done. But instead of trying to fight with him and carry on with him to ask him to leave, although it's her apartment, she has decided, at least for a while, that she's going to leave. I'm amazed. I'm like, okay. Until I find out the final answer, mind you, which means she's coming to live with us. I didn't know that part until later, but we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that as well. But I'm glad to know that she values herself enough to know that she doesn't have to put up with that, and to realize that this person is not being friendly towards her. We work to make friends. We follow these skills that we learn to make friends, and we are happy, but it's not always that the person we've made a friend with necessarily considers us as a friend. And that's just as important as being a good friend. And I realized that through them today. I was all aboard about, putting together a bunch of slides for today and talking about friendship skills. Then I realized, this is a little bit more real life stuff that we forget, because one of the most important skills in friendship skills is making sure you pick the right group of people to attempt to even be friends with. I say that because, I remember back when even I went to school, there was the clique that everybody thought was cool, whether it was the jocks or whether it was the cheerleaders or whatever the different cliques were. Everybody wanted to be a part of that particular clique. But, many people, who tried to become part of those cliques were not treated well. And you know what? That's not okay. That's not your group. That's not your friends. And that's not the group you should be looking for your friends in. So we have to, yes, we want to work to be good friends to others, but at the same time, we have to make sure that the people we're choosing to be friends with us are friendly to us. I am Mr. Williams. I thank you guys for listening to my story. Um, if more transpires, I may come back and let you know what happens next. But that's all I have for today. You guys take care. Till next time.